the ghost ship of the desert. The wind was never still in Yuma. It whispered through brittle creosote bushes and scraped across sun-bleached rocks like dry bones against stone. Even the houses leaned with age, as though bracing against something unseen. For Marcus Varela, the desert wasn't home. It was a memory he'd tried to forget, one sunstroke childhood summer at a time. But death has a way of calling us back. When the lawyer's email arrived, Marcus was in Boston, midway through cataloging artifacts from a pre-Incan dig in Peru. His grandfather, Enrique Varela, had passed quietly in his sleep. No ceremony, no real family left, just a single line in the will. To Marcus, I leave everything I've seen that no man should. Marcus hadn't spoken to Enrique in 5 years, not since the argument, not since his grandfather had tried to convince him, again, that there was a ship buried in the desert. Not a ruin, not a fossil, a ship. El Perdido, he called it. The lost one. It was ridiculous. A Spanish galleon, hundreds of miles inland? The old man had spent the last 20 years of his life wandering into the desert, tracking mirages and hallucinations. Marcus, a man of science and logic, had walked away from him, from his ghost ship, from his delusions. But when Marcus returned to Yuma to settle the estate, it all came back. The house stood alone, partially swallowed by sand. Inside, it smelled of dust, old books, and Palo Santo. The study had barely changed, shelves overflowing, notebooks stacked like towers, maps pinned to corkboards and layered with twine, pins, and cryptic notes. At the center of it all was a worn leather trunk. Inside were Enrique's field journals, photographs, and tapes. Some were decades old. The journals were detailed, obsessively so. Dated entries, coordinates, climate data, sketches of jagged rocks and shifting dunes. But buried among the factual notes were strange entries. Saw it again today, half buried in sand. Heard footsteps on the deck. No wind, but sails fluttered. They whisper at night. The crew. Not alive, not dead. The ship returns after the heat dies. Always after the heat dies. Marcus should have dismissed it. Chalked it up to dementia. But he didn't. What unsettled him was how precise it all was. The locations, the charts, cross-referenced accounts from 19th century settlers who described phantom masts and ghost sails in the dunes. Even satellite images where strange, linear shadows appeared, only to vanish days later. One photograph chilled him to his core. It was black and white, time-stamped 1978, a desert landscape at dusk. In the center, a tall silhouette, the shape of a mast, unmistakable. Ropes hung loose. Something about its angle, too straight, too deliberate, told Marcus this wasn't a rock, not natural, not coincidence. Beneath the image, Enrique had scrawled, "She rises again." That night, Marcus dreamed of ropes dragging across sand, of wet wood groaning in the dry heat, of something vast stirring beneath him, its breath like wind. When he woke, the desert was calling. Part 2. The Compass of the Dead. Coming next, Marcus follows the coordinates to the edge of a no-man's land. What he finds out there, half buried in dust and silence, will change his understanding of reality and awaken the ghost ship's ancient hunger. Marcus couldn't sleep. The desert wind hummed like a broken cello string through the cracked windows of his grandfather's house. The journals, maps, and strange photographs had scattered across the study floor after his frantic rereading, lit only by the dim orange glow of an old desk lamp. One page haunted him most, a map with coordinates scratched hastily in black ink, circled 3 times. Beneath it, a single word: anchor. By morning, Marcus had made up his mind. He loaded up a rusted but still functional 1996 Jeep Cherokee from the garage, still full of Enrique's expedition gear. Jugs of water, a Geiger counter, a broken compass with a needle that spun counterclockwise. He threw in a high-resolution drone, GPS, and a rugged satellite phone. Despite his skepticism, the years of archaeological training made him thorough. The sun was high by the time he reached the road's end, a crumbling dirt path that gave way to open desert. The heat shimmered in waves above the sand, and the scent of scorched earth filled his lungs. The coordinates pointed him toward the Anza-Borrego Badlands, an arid labyrinth of shifting dunes and fossil-rich terrain avoided by hikers for its dangerous terrain and strange electromagnetic anomalies. The first few hours yielded nothing unusual, just dry terrain, sun-baked stones, and the soft hiss of sand blowing across the windshield. But around 4:17 p.m., the Jeep's engine sputtered. Marcus cursed. It wasn't the fuel. The vehicle's electronics were glitching. GPS froze, the drone wouldn't launch, and the compass needle began to spin violently in its casing. Then the silence hit. A total, absolute stillness. No insects, no birds, no wind. He stepped out, boots crunching on cracked earth. The desert looked unchanged, yet somehow tilted, as if gravity had shifted just a degree too far in one direction. Then he noticed something ahead, a rise in the landscape. Not a dune. It had edges, angles, geometry. He walked closer. It was wood, warped, cracked, but unmistakable. Blackened as though fire kissed centuries ago, its grain visible beneath centuries of grit. The wood formed a curve, part of a hull, buried mostly beneath the sand, but clear in shape. Heart racing, Marcus descended the slope, brushing his fingers across the timbers. They were damp, not from moisture, but something else. A cold slickness, like seawater that had never dried. Then he heard it, a soft creaking, the unmistakable sound of rigging under tension. He looked up. There was nothing above him but sky, blue and cloudless. But the sound continued, drifting from somewhere just ahead. He moved forward, careful and slow. The sand shifted unnaturally beneath his feet, like walking across soaked carpet. The temperature dropped. Then it appeared, the bow. It rose sharply from the desert floor, carved with faded Spanish script, La Santa Muerte. The letters had been partially sandblasted away, but Marcus knew enough Spanish and history to recognize the implication: the Holy Death, an ill name for any vessel. He circled the exposed structure, pausing at what had once been the quarterdeck. The sand was unusually smooth, too smooth, as if something heavy had dragged across it recently. No wind, no wildlife, and yet tracks, footprints, booted, human, but wrong. The stride was uneven, deep in the toe, like something half dragged its legs. The prints led onto the ship, and they didn't come back. Marcus hesitated to document the site and return with a team, but the journals whispered otherwise. His grandfather had written, "You only see it when you are alone, only when the air dies and the sand forgets your name." He climbed. The deck was solid, impossibly so. The wood didn't groan beneath his weight, didn't shift. It felt preserved, as if it had never been meant to rot. A thick scent lingered here, salt, decay, and something older, metallic. A dark stain marked the boards near the foremast. It looked like tar but smelled of copper and brine. Then Marcus saw the compass. It was embedded in a wooden stand near what remained of the helm. Its needles spun violently in all directions until he stepped closer. The instant his boot touched the base of the helm, the needle stopped. Dead center, pointing not north, but into the ship. Below deck. Marcus froze. The wind returned then, sudden and sharp, slamming the hatch shut behind him with a sound like thunder cracking bone. He was no longer alone.
The sound echoed too long. When the hatch slammed behind him, it reverberated like a cannon blast, booming through the empty deck and down into the earth itself. Marcus spun, heart hammering. The hatch hadn't just closed, it had sealed. No breeze, no gaps, just thick, ancient wood, flush against the frame as if it had never been open. Darkness crept in quickly. The desert sun no longer reached the deck. The ship was in shadow, though the sky above remained a pale, cloudless blue. And then came the smell. Foul, heavy, layered with rot and seawater and something older, something like the scent of rotted parchment soaked in blood. The air was dense and cold, too cold for the desert. Marcus could see his breath as fog. He turned back toward the compass at the helm. Its needle was still pointing down, locked like a blade. With a shaky breath, Marcus opened the rusted grate leading into the ship's interior. The stairs below were steep, narrow, and utterly dark. He pulled a flashlight from his pack. The beam flickered, static. A high-pitched whine bloomed in his ears as the light passed over the stairwell. At first, he thought it was his own nerves, but then he realized the sound wasn't in his ears, it was inside the ship. A whispering. Low, slurred voices, speaking Spanish. No, chanting. Repeating the same phrase over and over, too fast, too quiet, like water circling a drain. Marcus descended. The walls closed in immediately, tight, claustrophobic. He had been in catacombs before, in Peruvian tombs and ancient cave dwellings, but this felt wrong, as if the ship's interior had changed over time, twisted into a labyrinth beneath the desert. The further he went, the less it resembled a galleon. The walls became slick, wet. Rivulets of moisture ran like veins through the timber, pulsing faintly under the flashlight beam. There were carvings, etched symbols Marcus didn't recognize, spirals, mouths, eyes, then movement. At the edge of the beam, something passed by, too fast to see, but enough to hear, a dragging sound, like wet rope pulled across stone, and a whisper. You returned. Marcus froze. He whipped the light toward the sound. Nothing. Just a hall lined with doors, bunks, a crew's quarters, dustless, preserved, and on the floor, footprints in black water. He followed. The prints led to a cabin door, heavy iron-banded oak with a twisted, corroded knob. The door was cracked open. Something moved beyond it. Marcus stepped inside. It was a captain's quarters, massive and ornate, untouched by time. A long table in the center, scattered with nautical charts, a cracked globe, candles long melted to nubs, yet they flickered with faint blue flames. And behind the desk sat a man, or what had once been a man. He wore the tattered remains of a Spanish admiral's coat, faded red, the brass buttons green with age. His skin was stretched and gray, his lips blackened, but his eyes, they were alive, wet, watching. He did not breathe, he did not blink, yet he spoke. You are the blood of Enrique Varela. Marcus couldn't respond. The thing's voice was dry and heavy, like wood cracking beneath pressure. Not human, not entirely. He came, he saw, he fled. The captain stood impossibly tall. His spine creaked as he rose. Shadows clung to him like smoke. His hands ended not in fingers, but splinters, long, sharpened splinters, stained dark. But he left you the map, the key. That was his mistake. Marcus stepped back. The captain advanced. We are bound to the sand, to the silence, to the storm that never ends. But you can unmoor us. The candle flames blew sideways, all at once, and the walls groaned. The ship shifted beneath Marcus's feet, not sinking, surfacing. Above them, through the planks, he heard it, the distant crash of waves. But there was no ocean. There was only desert. You saw her rise, the captain hissed. She has chosen you. Marcus stumbled out of the cabin, breath ragged. The ship shook again, and he fell against the slick walls. From below, chanting. From above, screams. He ran up the stairs, toward the hatch, which had somehow opened. The desert outside was now dark, not dusk, midnight. The stars overhead were wrong, too many. Constellations twisted, unfamiliar. The ship had moved, not in space, but in time. Marcus collapsed onto the sand, the ship looming behind him like a grave marker. Its sails, once still, now fluttered in a wind that didn't exist. And far across the dunes, lights flickered, lanterns, torches, a procession. The crew was coming. Marcus stumbles into the desert, but he's not alone. Emerging from the dunes are ghostly figures, sailors dressed in rotted uniforms, their skin bloated and waterlogged, though they walk on sand. These are the drowned crew, cursed to follow the ship even in death. As they draw near, Marcus realizes they are whispering his name. He runs, but the desert shifts unnaturally. No matter where he turns, he ends up back near the ship. In desperation, he consults the ancient map he took from the captain's cabin and realizes there's a buried shrine, the original anchor that binds the ship to this desert. If he can destroy it, he might sever the curse. He journeys toward it, chased by the procession. Along the way, visions torment him. Dying sailors, wreckage floating in midair, and the captain's voice echoing in his head, Marcus finds the shrine, an obsidian monolith carved with symbols matching the ones inside the ship. As the drowned crew surrounds him, he plunges a relic, a splinter from the captain's desk, into the altar. The monolith cracks, the ship screams. A storm rises, not of wind or sand, but memories. How the ship was cursed for trying to sail through forbidden waters, condemned to wander a desert that should never exist. As the monolith crumbles, the ship begins to sink, not into sand, but into shadow. The crew wails and fades. The captain appears one last time, smiling. You freed us, but not yourself. Marcus wakes days later, alone, miles from the wreck. The desert is silent. The ship is gone. But at night he hears distant waves, and his compass, it still points down.
Thanks for watching Dark Dreamer. If you enjoyed this content, please hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling content. Want more dark and thrilling content? Smash that like button and subscribe to Dark Dreamer for exclusive updates.